Today I'm speaking on electional astrology. And these are a few notes on the practice of electional astrology from my practice and some of the things I've learned through the years. Electional astrology, well, what is it? Let's pick a time to take an action. Astrologer Joan Quigley was known for working with Ronald Reagan. There was kind of this scandal that happened when people found out that Reagan had been using an astrologer. Joan Quigley, actually, her practice emphasized electional astrology. And this is the book Astrology Through History by William E. Burns, came out in 2018. He's got a little section here. He says, her practice emphasized electional astrology, the art of discerning the exact moments to take a specific action. She would help him find moments to give a speech, for example, or to have an inauguration ceremony. I'm going to be talking about two of the most famous electional astrology charts. Okay, there's the foundation of Baghdad, and then the coronation of Queen Elizabeth I. This is a famous electional chart chosen by astrologer John Dee, the famous Queen's magician. And so these are the two chart examples we're going to really dig into later in the talk. But first, I'd like to go through some texts and some electional astrology principles so we have a background to look at those two charts. Factor number one for how I determine if an election is a good chart or not. And I have here, be sure to check the condition of the moon in your elections. And that's really what we'll be talking about today, is the moon. How is the moon in your electional charts? The two main books that I'll be quoting from, and these are some of the earliest texts we have in the tradition dealing with electional astrology. Dorotheus of Sidon, his Carmen Astrologicum. This is the Dykes translation. This is book 3 of his Apollo Talismatics. Hephaestion of Thebes writes a little treatise on how to pick times and pick electional charts. Let's start off with this first principle, which is to keep the moon safe from malefic harm. And Picatrix, I think, has a really nice example. This is book 1, chapter 4, Trans, Greer, and Warnock. It says, the foundation of all of this is that you should see to it that in all good works the moon is safe from Saturn and Mars and their aspects. It makes sense, right? Because Saturn and Mars are the great malefic planets. The greater and lesser malefic, so the two malefic planets that we have in ancient astrology. And then I want to have this Dorotheus quote from Carmen, book 5. This is translation Dykes. He says, when he's listing things you don't want to have happen in an electional chart, and if the moon was with an infortune or looked at it. And infortune here is a malefic planet. So you don't want the moon with a Mars or Saturn or looking at Mars and Saturn, which this means making aspect to Mars or Saturn. I've found that at other parts of the ancient aspect doctrine that trines, for example, are not bad, especially a sign-based trine. If you don't have the moon applying to closely or separating from closely, a trine from Mars, let's say, I don't find that to be a harmful aspect. All right, next principle, don't leave the moon with, and I have that in quotes, with the nodes, because with is, what do we mean? What don't we want the moon to be in relation to the lunar nodes? Vettius Valens has this famous passage in book 5 of the Anthology, translation Riley, where he says, with reference to the days under investigation, if the moon is passing through the current position of the ascending node, or through the points in square or opposition, particularly if it is at the same degree position, beware of starting anything. Do not sail, do not marry, do not have meetings, and he goes through this long list of things you shouldn't do. But here, just note, Vettius Valens talks about square opposition or passing through via conjunction. So he's focused on those hard aspects again with the nodes. The Hephaestion of Thebes text is translated by Eduardo Gramaglia, though Ben Dykes does edit the translation. And so Hephaestion in book 3, he says, nor should she be on the eclipse points, here referring to the moon. So Hephaestion talks about this same principle. It's in Valens, it's in Hephaestion. You don't want the moon near those eclipse points. Remember, these are points when the lights of the sky get turned off, where the sun goes dark, where the moon turns red. And I have it in quotes because later in the electional tradition, there is this sense of, especially in the medieval tradition, we'll see it in the chart examples, you put the moon with the north node, because that's where the moon ascends, and the moon's path ascends above the ecliptic. So there's a sense of rising or gaining in strength. Next principle, the moon's ruler determines the outcome. So we want to keep the moon safe, the moon strong, but the moon's ruler has a strong effect for what the outcome of any election might be. Here's Hephaestion again in book 3. He says, for the beginnings belong to changeable Selene, that's the moon, herself, but the accomplishment of the powerful god of the house. So the accomplishment of the action belongs to the god of the house, or the ruler of the house that the moon is in. And of course, Dorotheus says as much in Carmen. So he says, Dorotheus here says, for the moon is the indicator of the root of every work, and the lord of the sign the moon is in is the indicator of its outcome. There's a sense that we have to take care of the lord of the moon, the ruler of the moon. We want it to be in a good condition. Next point, the moon's condition takes priority over the ascendant. This might be where I kind of get a little different or controversial than some other astrologers, but here's Hephaestion. He has this section where he says, look attentively to the lights of the moon, the master of the house she is in, and even the hour marker of the inception and its midheaven. And it's this phrase, and even. So he's kind of appending onto his list the idea that we would look at the ascendant as this kind of third and a very important condition. And I think it's still very important. You want to look at the ascendant. You want to protect the ascendant, the sign of the ascendant. You want to make sure that the ruler of the sign of the ascendant is in good condition. But if I'm prioritizing me, I want to prioritize that moon. Here's this quote from Dorotheus. He says, so he, referring to Valens, so he said, in the inception of every work, look at the sun, the moon, and the lord of the two signs in which the luminaries are. And with that, look at the ascendant and the midheaven. And so Dorotheus again has this list, and he's saying once you look here at the sun and the moon, then with that you can go look at the ascendant. So Dorotheus has this really nice quote. He just says, begin the inception and wait until the condition of the moon and her lord is suitable. So there's this just general principle. You see it over and over again in the text, that the moon, the condition of the moon, the condition of the lord of the moon, that is what we must wait to be suitable before we begin something. Hephaestion says that he would rather use the greatest number of the indications deemed powerful according to the occasion. And with this statement, I think he's saying, like, look and try to have the largest number of positive factors you can add to your electional chart. But this idea of the greatest number implies that you can't get them all, right? So we have to prioritize. And that's the purpose of this talk. What are we going to prioritize? My answer is the moon and the condition of the moon's ruler. So first chart, this is the foundation of Baghdad. All right, this was a team of ancient astrologers, some of the most important astrologers in history. I'm not going to list their names, but you can go research that. In this chart, and by the way, I'm looking at these charts in whole sign. It's unclear if these charts were quadrant houses. The John D chart is probably definitely a quadrant house chart, but I'm still going to look at it in whole sign. That's the way I practice. And so I want to analyze these from that model and from that perspective, and against the backdrop of the Dorotheus and Hephaestion a way of seeing things, which they were practitioners of whole sign houses likely, okay, most likely. So the first thing to know about this foundation of Baghdad chart is that the moon's in the 11th whole sign house. The moon is in the 11th whole sign house. It's a succeeding house, but it's a strong house, the 11th house. The moon's gaining in light, so it's the moon just after a new moon. The moon's getting stronger, growing in the sky. That's a principle of electional astrology that can be important. You want that moon gaining if you're going to do something that you want to grow. The moon's ruler in this case, both by term and domicile, has dignity. Venus is in Cancer, which is where Venus has day triplicity rulership. And so look at the condition of Venus. The Venus is in the 8th house. Venus is in maybe the weak 8th house. However, Venus sees the moon, makes aspect to the moon, and Venus has this nice dignity. And also the moon here makes no sign-based hard aspects to Mars or to Saturn. The moon's averse to Saturn and Taurus. And the moon in Libra makes a trine to Mars and Gemini. So again, there's an aspect to Mars, but it's a trine, and it's a separating trine. So the Mars can't really do damage there, even though Mars does see the moon by a traditional Ptolemaic aspect. The ascendant in this chart is strong with the ruler Jupiter in the first house. The ascendant is Sagittarius. Jupiter is partile conjunct the actual degree of the ascendant. But Mars here, and this is the feature of this chart, they elected to have Mars oppose the ascendant and Jupiter, 8 degrees Sagittarius, by sign, because Mars is in Gemini 6 degrees, and it's an applying opposition within 2 degrees. And the thing about this is, even if you were to use quadrant houses, you have the 5-degree rule in quadrant houses, which says Mars would still be in the 7th house, making an opposition, and it's still this within 2-degree applying opposition. So there was a choice here that the ascendant and its ruler were really harmed by this malefic Mars. And this is part of why I think it confirms this notion that the ascendant takes a back seat to the moon and the moon's condition. And Baghdad has a history of war, especially recently. We all know about the early 21st century conflicts there. But Baghdad's still here. It's still a capital city, a thriving Middle Eastern capital city. So this election worked. It was strong. Now this is the coronation of Queen Elizabeth. The moon is also in the 11th whole sign house, same as the foundation of Baghdad chart. The moon is also gaining in light. Again, you really like that when you have an inception. You have you can grow with that moon having all of this growth available. The domicile ruler of the moon is strong, Mars in Scorpio. So Mars is at home in Scorpio, a really strong place for Mars, strong sign for Mars to be. The term ruler Mercury, however, is under the beams of the sun, and Mercury does not have dignity according to the traditional scheme in this chart. Mercury is about 5 degrees away from the sun, burned up by the sun's beams in Aquarius. At daytime. Now, Mercury might have some dignity if we had night in air signs with that night triplicity rulership. So maybe there's a little bit of kind of turned off dignity there, but it's incipient and it's not activated in this chart. The moon makes no aspect at all by sign to Mars and Saturn. So it's totally averse to the malefics, this protection of the moon from the malefic planets. But look here, the moon's with the North Node. It's about 8 degrees in the same sign as the North Node. And so this is that exception I was talking about earlier. Sometimes you put the moon, if you have to put the moon somewhere, I would say, and have a hard aspect to either Saturn, Mars, or a node. Sometimes you can't avoid that. You put the moon with the North Node, in my view, that increasing node, that ascending node. And make sure that that ruler of the moon has dignity, because the moon, ruler of the moon, has dignity in both the chart examples. This is from Hephaestion's book 1 of his Apollo Talismatics. This is actually the Smith translation edited by Robert Hand. He has a list here of the places that are good, and his idea of what the best places or houses are is the 1st house, the 10th house, the 11th house, the 5th house, the 7th house, the 4th house, the 9th house, in that order are the good places. And so you can see in the 2 examples we looked at, the 11th house is actually the 3rd best place according to Hephaestion. And so it makes sense you would want to put the moon there. Even though in some of the Dorothean and the Hephaestion texts on elections, they really talk about the moon being in the pivots, which are the 1st, 10th, 4th, and 7th houses. Valens says that the moon becomes the ruler of foresight in the Riley translation. And I think this relates to this principle of using the moon, really prioritizing the moon and the moon's condition in our elections. The moon rules foresight, that vision of the future. And when we prioritize the moon, I think it can really empower and give us great foresight with the activities that we choose to undertake. So these are just some of the notes that I found useful. There are different house systems, different theories on aspects, different ways of analysis of how those aspect theories work, different orbs that are used, all different kinds of systems here that astrologers employ, right? Many tomes all throughout the tradition have been written on electional astrology, including many in contemporary times. Many astrologers have different ways of doing this, and this is not a comprehensive take of every factor that I might consider. It's just a high level, some of the most important factors that I like to use I wanted to share with you. Cartomancy pull, 7 of clubs, the Vantage card. This is Mars in Leo. This is that last decan of Leo. And it's really that fiery Mars, that doubling up of that martial fire. So here we have this idea of the war, of the great war, the wars of life, the fiery, passionate wars of life. We have to defend ourselves against other people. We have to defend our time and energy against people wanting to come into our space. We have to basically keep our eye on the prize with how we're choosing to maneuver through life and with respect to the things we're building and constructing. And you have that Mars in the whole sign 7th house and that Baghdad foundation chart. And Baghdad's had to fight its way and claw its way to where it is now, still existing, but has had to defend itself from colonizers, from incursions of all kinds, from people wanting to take it over. So I think this is that great call of warring, choosing your battles, and knowing that it's good to defend oneself and the things that one believes in. As always, you can book a donation-based reading with me, an astrology reading, at my website, sjanderson144.com. I look forward to reading for you. This audio can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, other podcast players. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at sjanderson144.